Most people think that in order to grow their business, the only ways they can do that is by spending more money on ads or changing their offer on the back end. But what if I told you that most companies are just one dialed in sales process away from potentially 10xing their revenue? The first question you ask yourself should never be, how can I spend more money on ads? It should always be, how can I multiply the money that I'm already spending in the most effective way possible? And after 8+ years and thousands upon thousands of hours on focusing on just that, I've built one of the most dialed in sales processes in the industry. We've tested every sales tactic, every objection handle, every sales process, onboarding flow that you could imagine across 300+ businesses and over 500,000 recorded sales calls. And throughout that testing, we found that it's not usually one major thing that helps a business 10x in 3 months' time on the existing sales process they have. It's usually a culmination of thousands of little paper cuts that are holding them back and stopping them from getting the conversion rates they need to scale. Now, in this video, I've packaged all of those thousands of things that we've noticed in the data. I've brought them down to 10 of the most impactful things that I've seen scale a business via their sales process and their sales function. Okay, the caveat to this is it's only applicable if you currently sell your product or service via a sales team. Okay, if you're selling via a checkout link or directly on your website and not through a sales team, this video is probably not gonna be as applicable. But if you're selling your service or product and it's an expensive one and you're selling it through a sales team, maybe you've got SDRs, you've got appointment setters, you've got closers or BDRs, then I'm gonna walk you through the 10 most impactful things that you can use to significantly increase your conversion rates before you spend money on ads. This way, as you scale your ads and as you scale your marketing, you now have way more profit coming out the other side. So the very first thing, before we could talk about all the sexy call processes and objection handles, the very first thing is your sales reps, how you hire them and how you onboard them, okay? You can have the best script and the best call flow and the best marketing in the world, but if you have a broken process to onboarding reps and ramping them up, then you will not be able to scale. Because as you spend more on ads, the quality of your salespeople is gonna consistently dilute and your conversion rate will go along with it. So the first thing is we make sure that every single closer can prove that they can feed themselves before we give them the quality opportunity in the business. So what does that mean? Every single closer that comes on board, they start as a junior closer or a full cycle sales reps within our company. I'm not taking a brand new closer in the company and putting them on the warmest calendar right out the gate with the hottest leads. I need to create the habit within them that they have to hunt what they eat. They cannot just expect the warmest of opportunities to land on their lap. So now what happens is I get somebody who's incredibly driven and I create this expectation for them that, hey, if you go out and you hunt what you eat and you outbound dial and you get the leads and the scraps that are in the CRM and close them, you are going to far surpass anybody else in any industry because you can fill your own opportunity. So what we do when we bring a new closer on board is we give them a very clear plan. We give them a 30, 60, 90-day clear plan like you would do with any other hire you do. I just think that most business owners, when they're hiring a sales rep, they assume because they're a sales rep and they're commission only that they can just grab them, throw them on the offer. They don't do a good ramp. But if you're hiring someone who's got a 200 to 300K a year salary, you're probably gonna do a really dialed in ramp up properly to make sure you're getting the best return on investment. The difference with a sales rep, because you're not paying that salary, is you're paying their salary in the leads. You're paying for every single booking and every single lead you give them. That is their salary that you're paying for. So you better have a really dialed in ramp up process. Okay, so again, what we do is we put them through a 30, 60, 90-day plan. They're doing outbound only, usually at least for the first 60 days of being on board, unless they've far exceeded expectations or unless we have a really high demand for it. And they're only basically picking up excess leads in the CRM. They're picking up no-shows, cancels, they're picking up opt-ins that don't book. They're picking up maybe like lead magnet downloads, whatever it is, whatever campaigns that business is running. So this is forcing them to work outside of the box. This is forcing them to get creative and to build their own pipeline. Because if you throw somebody on the calendar right away and they don't have that skill, they'll only be able to close when the business is going good. But if something happens to the ad account or if something happens to where you have to reduce volume or lead flow for a week, whatever it is, and you don't have closers who build pipeline and who are self-sustaining, then your business will suffer as a result. And then you'll see the true impact of having inconsistencies in revenue, because like I said, you won't be able to scale ad spend. So that's the very first thing, is having a dialed in ramp up process for your closers. All of our new closers that come on board are held to a minimum dial KPI of 150 dials a day for 5 days a week. Okay, as they begin to start doing those dials and setting their own appointments and closing deals, their dial KPI lowers because now they're going to be given inbound opportunity, right? So if I've got 8 calls on my calendar, I probably won't be able to do 150 dials in that day. So as we start to ramp them up on the calendar, they start closing deals, we ramp them up on the calendar, then we lower their dial KPI from 150 to 50 dials a day. So even if I'm a closer and I'm on a full calendar, you still need to hit minimum 50 dials every single day between calling your pipeline, outbounding your new leads, doing speed to booking, all that fun stuff. And really what this does, it means we don't struggle with having our reps call no-shows. We don't struggle with having our reps value the leads that they're getting because we've set this expectation from day one. So now they treat the leads like they paid for it themselves, which is really the key to scaling an efficient sales team and a strong culture. The second thing that I see so many business owners fail at when they're bringing on a sales team is they let their reps govern their day. They let the sales reps decide what they're going to do today. There's no structure, especially like founder-led sales teams, right? If you don't have a sales manager, a sales director, which most businesses that are between maybe $1 million to $2 million a year probably don't have that. They bring on their closer. They probably don't do a dialed-in ramp-up process. They just throw them on the calendar. They give them a script and they hope it works out. But then the worst part is they don't really have a structure for how their day should go. Okay, so what we do is we have what's called a day in the life document, where every closer has this day in the life document. They have their daily priorities. So they have their 5 priorities every single day that they need to do before they log off for the day. And what this does is it just gives them a really clear path of execution. When there's downtime, they go right back to their priority list. So the 5 things on the priority list for our closers is, the first one is inbound bookings, right? So if they have an inbound lead that's booked on their calendar, that obviously takes precedent over speed to lead, over outbound dials, XYZ. The second one is speed to booking, meaning if they get a new call booked onto their calendar for 2 to 3 days out, their first thing that they should do if they're not already on priority number 1, which is on an inbound call, is call that lead, introduce themselves, confirm the appointment, and try to move the appointment forward. The third one is pipeline management. So pipeline management is a pretty broad term, but basically what it means is like, did you follow up with all of your no-shows? Did you follow up with all of your cancels? Did you update the CRM? Well, now that's kind of all done with AI, but in the past was, did you update your CRM? Did you update your notes? But the fourth one is KPI. So if you've done 1, 2, and 3, and you're still not at KPI for the day on outbound activities, then that's where you're going to start calling the lead magnet leads, the webinar leads, XYZ. This is for closers, keep in mind. So SDRs and outbound closers is a different priority process. The fifth one is basically your end of day wrap up. So updating your CRM, leaving your notes, your end of day report, all that fun stuff, which again, all of that is pretty much done now with AI. Our closers don't really update their CRMs, but this is still what's in our playbook as their 5 daily priorities. Third thing, the third fix that probably is one of the most important ones, and if most businesses did this today, they would likely see a significant increase in their conversion rates, is just speed. Okay, so now you've got closers that have been onboarded and ramped effectively. They've got really dialed in expectations of how to operate within your business. You've got a daily checklist for your closers so they know exactly what to do, at what cadence, and in what order. The next thing is you have to have a culture of speed within your sales team. When a new booking comes in, they call it right away. It boggles my mind that a closer can have someone book on their calendar for Friday and it's Monday and they don't make an effort to reach out to that client and get them on sooner. Speed is going to be your number 1 asset if you're the smaller fish competing against much larger businesses and established businesses. If you can call their leads faster than them, you can sell them something faster, you can get on a Zoom call with them faster, and you can deliver the results faster, you will beat those guys, no matter how much more revenue or marketing or ad spend that they have over you. So that's why one of the first things we do when we bring on a business within Net Revenue, our recruitment and management firm, is we focus on the speed. Okay, so we install speed to lead dashboards in every single business. We install daily end of day leaderboards every single day. Who was the fastest for their bookings? Which setter was the fastest for the leads? And then we also install comp structure that's tied to it, right? So bonuses when you hit speed to lead under 5 minutes on all your bookings. So if I'm a closer and I've got under 5 minutes speed to booking, I'm getting bonused out at the end of the month. Now, obviously there's a reality that I could be on calls, but there's going to be a median average, right? So if a booking comes in overnight, that's not going to affect like the median average of the leaderboards. But the most important thing is that you have a culture of speed. So you have these dashboards, you have leaderboards, you have a leadership team that talks about speed and that also acts with their own speed, right? So if you've got a leadership team that takes an hour to respond to Slack messages, you're probably not gonna have a sales team that answers a lead within a minute of them coming in. So that is the third one, and in my opinion, it's probably one of the most important ones on this list, and it's why it's one of the first things we do when we come on board into a new company and are working on their sales team. So impactful, we've had some businesses literally, and I know I talked about the 10X at the beginning of this video, but we've had some businesses literally 10X in 3 to 6 months. All we did was come on board and bring on more manpower and create a culture of speed to get to their leads faster. If you go on my channel and you go look at one of the case studies we did for a tax firm from 100K a month to 1.1 million a month, the main thing we did for that company was just call the leads faster. And literally without them spending $1 more on ads, we're able to 10X over 6 months. Now that might not be for you. You might already be on top of your speed, but it's the reality of how powerful this impact can be for your company. Fourth thing is surrounding show rates. Okay, so more specifically, how you go about solving show rates. So first of all, for us, the show rate is not just a marketing metric, it's a sales team metric, okay? So we do not measure close rate on offers made. We do not really measure, well, we do measure it, but we don't leaderboard it, and we don't measure the sales team's performance by it. Now, a lot of people are probably watching this and be like, well, hey, if all the leads aren't showing up, then it's not really a closer issue. But the reality is that if you've got a culture of speed and you've got a culture of outbound and generating your own opportunities, only looking at the close rate on offers made creates this lack of ownership within your sales team that will 100% bring down your show up rates. Every single time. There's going to be people that want to protect their numbers. There's going to be people that aren't incentivized to call the leads. They're not going to be incentivized to do speed to booking. But if the only number that you measure their KPI by and the only number, and like I said, we're measuring other data points, but I'm not judging their performance off of them before looking at their close rate on book calls. If that's the metric that you focus on when you're on meeting your one-on-ones with them or when you're on your performance reviews with them, they're going to take ownership over every single booking that lands on their calendar. That's just the reality. So one of the first things we do when we're engineering show rates is we create a culture where your show rate is your responsibility. Now, when you've got a show rate that's affecting the entire company, beyond just one salesperson, but the entire company, that is probably a structural issue. That is probably a marketing issue or a more top of stream problem that you can kind of create solutions beyond the sales team. And this is where you have to start looking at show rate not just as like a coaching problem, but as an engineering problem, right? This is where we really have to engineer the funnel towards going, okay, well, if I'm a lead and if I don't know who this company is or not really aware of their solution, am I likely to show up to this call? I don't know, right? So what we typically do and what we've found is the most important things that impact show up rate are usually what's happening before the lead hits schedule. Most people spend all of their time trying to solve for show rates after the lead schedules. The workflows, the nurturing, the emails, the triage script, all of those things. That's where most people spend 90% of their times when they're trying to fix show rate. Where you should realistically spend all of your time when you're trying to fix show rate is the lead journey before they schedule, okay? So are you marketing to a lead that is already problem aware, right? That's usually, unless you've got giant marketing budgets and you can go market towards the unaware leads and create a problem for them and then bring them through a marketing funnel. Most people that are probably watching this don't have those kinds of budgets. Are you marketing to leads that are already heavily problem aware, right? And then is your marketing doing the job of bringing them from problem aware to solution aware, right? What are these solutions that they hadn't considered? And if you can do that, and you can bridge that gap within your marketing, you will have a much higher show up rate. And then your sales team's job is to bring them from solution to product aware, right? And then sign them up, close them, and then keep them moving, right? So if your marketing system is pushing people through the process that is too early, they're not really solution aware yet, they don't really believe that you can help or they don't even know how you can help, and the likelihood of them showing up for a Zoom call, especially if you're doing your calls on Zoom, is very low. And that's when you just can't be lazy in your marketing. You have to create like a multiple pronged approach for grabbing the top of funnel leads, the wide array of leads that you can get top of funnel with these lead magnets that are a little bit more broad, bring them through the lead magnets, retarget them with middle of funnel content, which is probably going to be the webinars, the VSLs, the book funnels, whatever you're selling, and then getting them on the calendar with your sales team. So there's probably going to be a little bit of engineering engineering needed within that funnel process to really increase your show up rates if it's a team-wide problem. Now we're actually gonna dive into the call flow, the sales process, the closers, what are they taking them through on the actual call. So the fifth thing that you can do to significantly increase your conversion rates is to leverage the first 5 minutes of the call to pre-handle objections. All of our closers set their call. I know this is probably a hot topic if there's other sales managers watching this where they believe you should just jump into rapport or you should just jump into the sales process. A lot of people that are a little bit backwards just jump into like a presentation on the sales call. We don't do that. All of our closers, the second they jump on a call with someone, they take the 3 to 5 minutes to set the agenda of the call. What is the plan? What are we covering? What is the ideal outcome that we arrive at? Okay. And it's not like the Dan Locke kind of give me a yes or no, don't waste my time. They're just simply setting the frame and setting the agenda of the call. Okay. And then in the discovery phase, when they jump into the discovery, the focus of the discovery is what are the objections that I know I'm going to get later on down the line that I can pre-handle in the discovery by asking them really pointed questions that forces a response in order to handle it. Okay. So there's obviously, I could go on for hours and hours and we'll probably do other videos on the discovery phase itself, but the goal of the discovery phase is to prevent the objections down the line. And if you can start positioning your sales team to follow their discovery phase in that way, they're going to have a much, much higher likelihood of converting their prospects. And they're not going to be battling for objections for an hour on a call. Okay, so that's one of the main pivots that we make in sales process when we come into a company. Is the discovery is not to find out if they're a good fit. You should already know if they're a good fit. The discovery is to just pre-handle those objections, give them the identity of being a buyer, get them excited about the next steps, handle the fear, and get them moving. The fifth one is the first 3 minutes of the sales call. Now, how you start a sales call is one of the most important things you can do in that entire call because it sets the frame for the rest of it. You could have one closer, you could have two closers speak to the same lead on separate days, and one of them can come back to the sales manager and say, yeah, this guy was super cold, super uninterested, not a good fit. I moved him to bad fit, right? Not even lost. I moved him to bad fit. And then you can have another closer, the same lead, who spoke to the same guy on a different day. Be like, oh, this guy was ready to go. He was dialed in. It was a laydown, right? What was the difference? Probably the difference was how they opened the call. The closer that had the laydown most likely opened the call by setting the agenda, making it very clear and making it very easy to follow. You don't want to make the beginning of your sales call feel uncertain or difficult to follow. It should be, hey, this is what we're going to cover today. This is what I want to learn. This is what I'm going to tell you. And this is the outcomes we can arrive at. And that's it. And the reality is if you set that agenda for them, this lead doesn't jump on a lot of sales calls most likely. You're jumping on 8 calls a day. The lead probably is only jumping on 1 a month, depending the industry that you're selling for. So if you could remove the kind of confusion or the, not fight or flight, but if you could remove the uncertainty from that lead early on in the call, then you're gonna have a much more seamless process versus jumping on the call and just drilling them with questions right out the rip. Next, number 6 is the discovery phase. Okay, so now that you've set the agenda of the call, you've set the outcome of the call ahead of time, you move into the actual discovery phase of the sales call. So discovery phases, I could probably spend hours upon hours upon hours just talking about this. So I'm gonna try to chunk it down to the most important portion of a discovery phase and not so much what you should do, but what you should avoid. Okay, so most people's discovery phases sound like an interrogation, okay? They're asking yes or no questions, or maybe they're asking open-ended questions, but they're going question to question to question to question to hopefully pre-handle the objections. And the reality is just not really conducive to a really solid sales conversation, okay? The person's gonna know they're getting sold to. You're not building any real fundamental rapport. You're not really helping that prospect go through any sort of transformation that's gonna want them or create the need for them to buy, okay? So one of the first things that we do when like training a new salesperson is we teach them the VLFAR framework. Okay, so VLFAR, validate, label, frame, ask, and repeat. That is really what the discovery phase is built upon. Now, depending your industry, product, or service, you're going to be framing it differently and you're going to be asking different questions and you're going to be bringing the prospect through a different transformation through that discovery, but that's really what's happening throughout. Okay, so I've just received the answer to a question, I validate it, or if it's obviously not the answer I'm looking for, then I could challenge it, but in most cases, I validate it. I'll usually label it, so it sounds like, it seems like. I'll take the words that they're saying and I'll create it back to them in a different way, but usually one level or layer deeper than what they've told me, to create that feeling that I understand what they're talking about and create the real rapport that's gonna move a sales conversation forward. I frame the next question. So whenever I'm asking a question, usually you're creating some sort of framing around it so that it doesn't sound like an interrogation. It feels as though we're in a conversation. I ask my next question and then I repeat, validate, label, frame, ask, repeat. So that is what our discovery phase is built upon. Now, like I said, I could do a whole hour as to exactly what we're asking, and I probably will do that if you stay tuned and subscribe, but that's really what it's built upon. And when we're like coaching at a high level, it's the pathway that we want everyone to build their discovery phase on. Number 7 is tying the price to the outcome, not the features. Okay, so you've gone through the set, you've gone through the discovery phase, you've pitched the program, you've told the stories, and you've actually presented the offer. There's realistically 1,000 different ways you could present an offer, and they all work. If you've done a really good discovery phase, they all work. But where a lot of people really drop the ball is when they drop the price. When we drop the price, we do not feature list. Okay? We do not say, well, hey, for this and this and this and this, it's this price. Okay? We don't do that. Everybody knows it's a sales tactic. Everybody feels as though they're being sold to when you do that. Okay, so what we do instead is we tie it to the outcomes. So, hey, first, the second we've gone through the product, the first thing we're doing is we ask them if there's anything missing. Was there anything missing from the product or from what I just explained that you're really hoping would be there for you to achieve XYZ outcome? That is the first thing we do. It's a no-oriented question. It's really easy to answer. It puts the prospect at ease, and it helps them follow along on your lead. They'll usually say no. Then I'll usually ask them something along the lines of, had you seen the investment already for the product? Okay? They'll usually say no, unless your price is front and center. They'll usually say no. And then that's when I go into the actual price job. Well, hey, for us to help you accomplish XYZ in XYZ time, the investment is $5,000, $50,000, whatever it is. And then you drop the price. So I'm not feature listing and dropping the price. I'm bringing them through, I'm making it feel easy for them. I'm confirming that everything is there that they needed, and I'm tying it to their outcome. That's the most important part when you're dropping a price. Number 9 is the data reporting. Okay, so the 9th thing that we typically do the second we walk into a sales operation is we build out the reporting for their sales team and their sales function. Okay. Like I said before, most people are tracking vanity metrics. They're tracking close rate on offers made, close rate on calls taken, or even worse, like cash collected per offer made. Just these super kind of vanity metrics that don't really help you grow as a business owner. But what we also do, even though we've got one of the best dashboards in the world, is we build what we call a stoplight report. Okay, so a stoplight report is week over week. You have usually between 4 and 7, it's the sales department. You have between 4 and 7 numbers or data points and targets for those numbers. We usually reset the targets every single quarter. If you're growing much more aggressively, then you might want to do that every single month. But in a sales function, what that might look like is you have close rate on booked calls, you have show up rate, you have cash collected per book call. I usually really like having cash collected per lead. You might have lead to book ratio, and then you might have 2 or 3 more numbers to calculate kind of like your setter's performance as a whole. And then obviously your cash collected and your contract value are pretty important. You'll probably have those on your stoplight. So what we do is we map those numbers out, the most important numbers, okay? Usually try not to go more than 8. We map those numbers out on a sheet. We map the targets. What are the targets that I want to hit for each one of those? And then every week we manually input them. It has to be manual because somebody has to own it. We manually input the numbers and we highlight green, yellow, or red. And then on that meeting, on that week, when we're reviewing the sales function, anything that's red, there needs to be at least 3 to 4 attack vectors geared towards solving that red. And when you start to do that, scaling and solving the constraints of your sales process and your sales team becomes incredibly easy. It just takes time, but the reality is the more you throw at it, the more attack vectors you throw at it, that time is going to significantly reduce. Okay, so that's the 9th thing, is the data reporting. It's incredibly important, and so many people look over it. A lot of people have dashboards, right? Especially now with AI, you could whip up a dashboard in seconds and you can have a really nice thing put together. But not many people are actually setting real targets for these KPIs and are actually looking week over week, are they hitting those targets? Number 10, to bring everything home, is the performance review of your actual sales team. Okay, so now you've got a really dialed in ramp up process, you've got a dialed in sales team, everybody's doing outbound, everybody's operating with speed, you've got a great process and call flow for discovery phase, objection handling, price drop. The last thing now is, as you scale, Are you pulling the underperformers off of the strongest leads to the outbound and then eventually off the company in a time frame that's not going to hold your company back? Like I said before, everybody thinks that because their closers are commission only, that they don't need to have these really dialed in performance review processes that you would have with like an engineer on your team that you're paying 300 grand a year for, right? That engineer that you're paying 300 grand a year for, if they don't deliver their projects on time or they're delivering really subpar work, you'd probably be pretty quick to be like, well, hey, this is way too expensive. So many people think when a closer, because they're commission only, well, it's like, hey, he closed, $50,000 for me last month, even though my KPI is 150,000, that's still 50K that I made from it. You have to understand that the investment you're paying in that closer is the leads and the bookings you're getting them. When somebody's missed their activity KPI, so like their outbound dials, XYZ, for a week, is usually immediate action after that first week. We don't usually wait. And often it's like 3 to 4 days, not an outbound KPI. Hey, what's going on? We're gonna have to pull you off the calendar. We're gonna have to put you only on outbound. I have to pull you back to junior closer, whatever that looks like. That's usually happening pretty quickly. If they're missing their success metrics, like their close rate or their cash per book call, it's like a skill issue, not an output issue. Usually after 1 full week of missing that KPI, we're reducing their priority on the calendar and we're reducing their calendar to a half day. So they're not getting nearly as many bookings. What that does is because they're getting less bookings, now every close that they do significantly improves their close rate, brings them back up. We're usually doing that after 1 week. If they miss it again for another week, on the second week, we're usually pulling them off the calendar. And they're off the calendar, usually they have another 2 to maybe 4 weeks off calendar to bring in enough deals to get their close rate back up to KPI, then get another chance back on the calendar. And if they don't do that after 4 weeks, and usually we're cycling them off the team, maybe demoting them to a setter, but they probably just aren't the best fit at that point. If they've gone through a good ramp up and a good onboarding, right? Like if you got a terrible onboarding and then people aren't hitting KPI and then you're like firing everyone and churning through people, then that's probably like a system problem, not a person problem, right? But if you've done the first 2 things in this video, now as you're scaling, you got a team of 5 or 6, you need to have a really dialed in process for pulling people off when they're not performing. Otherwise your lead flow, bookings, your conversion rates are really, really going to suffer. And one bottom performer is way worse for your business than you think. Because not only do they bring the numbers down, but they bring the team down. They're gonna jump on meetings without the right energy. They're gonna create a lot more ripple effect in your business than you could probably imagine. The people that can't cut it, you need to get them off the boat very quickly and efficiently. So that's the full 10-step process to dialing in your sales team and sales function within your business. Like I said, these are some of the first things we do when we come into a business. We want to help them scale, usually from around 100K a month to about $1 million a month. These are the main things that we're doing within their sales team right out the gate. So if you want some help doing this, if you have thought about bringing on a company to help you manage your sales team, to help you manage your sales process, you can go to our website, netrevenue.io. You can fill out an application. You could book a time to speak with our Chief Growth Officer, Wade, or you can just continue to consume these resources. We've got some case studies on our website of people that we've helped and how we've helped them. That's also a great place to start. Okay, so the website will be down below. I look forward to working with you, and if not, subscribe, like. I appreciate the support. To the moon.